Let me introduce myself. I'm Carla Gibson. My California home, where I lived with my husband and children at the time, had black mold that had been there for months prior to my near-death experience. I caught pneumonia while going from Monterey County to Santa Clara County, where my parents lived. The doctor had not yet made a diagnosis or addressed my complaints. Following my recovery in Santa Clara County, I relapsed in Monterey County. After returning to my hometown, I moved to Santa Clara County. My near-death experience occurred about that time. In the middle of the night, I'd pass out. The paramedics would whisk me away to the emergency room after administering first aid. When I am ready, I will be discharged. The near-death incident occurred during the third iteration of this recurring event. My son dragged me 15 to 20 feet to the wall phone before dialing 911. They dispatched fire, paramedics, and the Delta Squad, the local police unit, to investigate the possible reasons of death. My son is shown to be the best historian by all accounts. At the time, he was only 17. He alleges they used the paddles after injecting my heart very immediately. There were several occasions when my heart was startled. I am unaware of the method and cannot recall how many times it was performed. Oxygen was continuously delivered. This is where my own experiences deviate. To be with my son, the fire captain would listen on his unit and then travel from wherever he was. On this particular evening, he dressed casually in blue jeans, a sweater and slippers, as is his custom. Here is my own account. First and foremost, I'd want to emphasize that the concept of happy sentiments is utterly useless in this context. What was occurring was obvious to me, and I was enraged. Like many pictures of New York City's subterranean tunnels, the first thing I recall is being in a poorly lighted path. Hues were dim. I could hear people talking gently, as well as the noises of individuals in small groups walking by. Their ages vary. I wouldn't pay heed. The terrain was blanketed in various shades of gray. My experience with prior life regression has taught me to check under my feet before doing anything else. I looked down and focused on my feet. I wore no shoes at all. I focused my attention on my feet to better understand my current dilemma. This had been done for what seemed like an eternity. About 5 feet away, I summoned the guts to look up and notice people walking. The tunnel was approximately 75 feet tall and 30 feet wide in the center. A man entered my line of vision from a distance of around 10 feet and walked 2 or 3 feet ahead of me at a right angle of 30 degrees. His long pointed nose, white wall haircut, and, as the expression goes, a face only his mother could adore gave him the appearance of a 1940s mobster. He wore a pulled-down felt hat, as was fashionable at the period. He gave me a glance, veered away, and kept going. He wore nothing but gray, including his cuffed jeans. Anger, hate, and dread overwhelmed him. I studied my immediate surroundings. The tunnel was huge. I gazed around as folks walked side by side. I was leaning on the tunnel wall. I felt totally alone. I realized that I was making progress, but it was slow, irregular, and motivated by conviction. Then noticed that light was beginning to enter the upper 1/3 of the tunnel from somewhere below. The light's gorgeous, brilliant butter golden tone gave everything an unearthly sense. The more it poured through the tunnel ceiling, the more I wanted to get out. The next thing that comes to mind is being in a completely black area, both literally and mentally. I know I'm not alone. Also, I'm not sure about my shape, and I don't feel as integrated as a physical entity. Here, a tremendous struggle is taking place. In some ways, I'm not going to discorporate. At least 2 other entities and I are engaged in a heated argument. Their presence is tremendous, even if I can't see them. Maintaining oneself in this body is challenging. My therapist gave me an incantation that Catholic priests allegedly use during exorcisms, so I started saying it. This sounds entirely out of the norm and ludicrous, and I understand. I can't believe how many odd items occur many times in this survey. At first, I struggled to extricate it. Kept saying it in my mother's kitchen until I finally stopped. It was evident from what I saw. They drew the gurney as high as it could go, pushing me back against the wall. My body was wrapped in blankets and bound with straps. My son, the fire chief, 4 members of the fire rescue crew, a Delta Squad police officer, and 4 paramedics stood a few feet away from me, stunned. They seemed to be about to proclaim me dead when I started yelling my spell. Reciting sprang to mind as I recovered consciousness. It never occurred to me that I had yelled. It was tough for me to find the appropriate words to explain myself. Everyone greeted me individually before leading me out. I chastised the Delta Squad member for refusing to take off her sunglasses. I have no doubt she was hiding behind them to protect herself from the strange encounter. Suddenly, the room became crystal clear. His strong arm was cradling my son's shoulders, soothing him. Before everyone left, I asked that the chief accompany my son. Paramedics took over at this point. 4 males in their 20s were there. By the time we got to the ambulance, everyone wanted to talk to me. Except for one. I can still see the expressions of surprise on their faces. The driver was a large man with a big smile on his face. He sat back in his chair and murmured, "Put the lady up here by me." He then respectfully requested that they take a few moments to share their experiences with my rescue. As far as anyone could tell, it was all new to them. Was going to begin shouting a prayer while fully concealed. Firefighters and paramedics both jumped into action and began cursing. They were taken aback while listening to my spell. Suddenly, I went from utterly silent to yelling aloud. According to the driver, I will be remembered for all time as the person who documented their stories. The intricacies of my incantation are highly guarded, although it includes the use of a sword and an acknowledgement of the Trinity in blue flame. It is my sincere opinion that the incantation holds magical properties independent of the recitationist. Furthermore, I am aware that the incantation predates the formation of any organized religion. I'm not sure how it benefited me, but everyone in my mom's kitchen that night heard me recite it. Looking back, I see that I had to battle and resist the urge to give in to the experience. In terms of science, my story is merely a tale. There were lapses in my consciousness during the transformations I went through. The emotions were intense, with a heavy emphasis on an overwhelming determination to stay. As I gaze back down the tunnel, I can still feel the weight of the people passing by, their expressions communicating a wide variety of emotions, reverence, dread, and comfort in their whispers. There were no impressions of surprise or joy. People passed through the tunnel in separate groupings. Since then, I've seen photographs of tunnels that look almost identical to the one we were in. Perhaps other tunnels hold more positive versions of how I felt at the time. No joy or happiness were present. I was sent to Stanford Hospital. My official diagnosis was low arterial oxygen levels. For a year, I was almost always connected to an oxygen machine. I still occasionally consume oxygen. That happened 7 years ago. I was heartbroken after seeing so many wepages about near-death experiences. While suffering from insomnia earlier today, I came upon this website. I know I had a near-death experience. Even though my eldest child has a PhD in biological anthropology, she insists that my NDE was all in my head and that my brain was just playing tricks on me. My son was reluctant to share any information until around a year or 2 ago, but he has since confirmed what the paramedics reported. In addition, he has exceptional recall. He can now cope with the mild PTSD symptoms he experienced. It is a blessing that I am still alive and healthy in this body. My first grandson was born 5 months ago. My life ambitions include helping my child through college and accomplishing my own professional aspirations in the healing arts. This experience has proven helpful to me. It is my honest hope that this experience will provide significant learning opportunities. Many thanks.